Okay, a not so little look at how to get more functionality out of your HOTAS. I have on my Virtual stick, I have an index finger switch along the top left, and it has forward position, then center, then aft, and depress. The center position doesn't actually trigger anything, although it could be made to. I'm not using it for that. What I'm using it for, I'm going to go forward, and you'll notice that depresses my air-to-air switch. If I press forward again, it'll cycle through the weapon types that I have, and I've got it set to go through my AMRAMs and my sidewinders. I could add guns to it if I want. I don't want to. And if I go aft, it doesn't do anything. I could have it, I could add guns to the aft. In fact, I think I'll do that. So that's that. If I want to deselect air-to-air, I depress it, and that turns it off. I want to go back to air-to-air, forward again, and then cycles through my weapons, and then depress it. Air-to-ground, I go aft on the same switch, and now then I've got two different types of functions. I can go forward, and that's going to select, the top, between the top two left push buttons. You may not want to configure this because it sort of becomes dependent then. It has to be dependent on a particular MFD and particular buttons. So I can cycle between them. You see I'm cycling between PB6 and PB7. I'm just toggling that forward. And then if I want to step, I've got that set to my aft, and that's going to be the right side button 3. And you'll notice it is being pushed, but nothing's happening because there's only one of that type of weapon. So I do have two stations with these types of bombs on them. So now I can step through them, again with the aft button, and you can see I'm doing that. And then I can depress it, turns it, we go back to nav mode. And so let's take a look at how that works in Joystick Gremlin. It gets a little bit complicated, and there are some potential issues that I ran into through testing this, and I'll mention those in passing. They're not an issue right now because of the way I've got it set up. But if you want to avoid making it complicated with the air-to-ground, then you need to do something, but we'll come back to that. First, let's take a look at the default. These are the modes. And by the way, Joystick Gremlin, whenever it switches modes, it's not showing you what's selected. These are simply for editing purposes. Show my default. And on my joystick, button 19 and 20 are the forward and aft positions. 18 is depressed. So what do I do whenever I press button 19? Well, I chose map to keyboard. I added it. Actually, I didn't. Yes, I did. I get to chain later. So then map to keyboard, record keys. I click that, and I just press the number 1. And then, and it's kind of important to do this before you switch the modes, because if you switch the modes, then it may press that particular key that only exists in that mode, which is not what you want. So, it is context sensitive, and it can be set to do different things. So it's just best to do it this way. And then what do? Well, I added another one. I chose switch mode. And I added that, and then I said switch to mode that I created. We'll take a look at how to do that. And so then let's take a look at what happens to what becomes functional then. Well, I'm only going to use this one switch for this, but I want everything else to be functional while I'm in air-to-air mode. And so let's go up here and take a look at manage modes. And there's parent or none. The default, which is the primary mode, has no parent. But any others that you create will have, let's just call it test. And by default, it'll say none, but I can make it have a parent mode. What that means is that it will acquire not only what you add to it, but all of those others of its parent. And that can be a little problematic sometimes. And I'll show you how to avoid that if it does become problematic. So I'm using the default for both of these. And we're looking at the air-to-air now. Let's go back to those buttons. And what happens? Well, button 18, which is the same button in my default mode that presses 1, that calls up the air-to-air, now it does something different. And I'm sorry, button 18 is the depress. And so that presses 1 again, which turns off the air-to-air mode. Button 19 would be the forward. And the left shift S is what I've got set up to select my sidewinders, and the left shift D selects my AMRAMs. And so how I did that, rather than just remap and add, I said, map to keyboard, and then I set this to chain, and I added it. And that will allow me to create 2 different functions here, and it cycles between them. And here, we'll just pull up Notepad and show you that effect. So I'm going to go here. That selects my air-to-air mode. And then I'll toggle it again, and it goes left shift D, again, forward. All I'm doing is forward. Left shift D, left shift S. And I'm doing the same thing. I depress it, 1 again. And so that's how that works. And it works quite well. I just showed you that it does. And so then we want to go back to, once we turn it off by the depress, what does that do? Well, that's going to get us out of it, switch back to default mode. Button 20, which I'm also using for the air to ground, which is configured, if it's doing some strange things, you may want to set it to no op, which will override anything from the parent. And so any button that you don't want to do something unexpected, just set it, remap it, and choose no op. So then let's look at our air to ground mode. That's going to be a little different. So whenever we select that, and well, first let's look at how do we call that from our default. That's going to be the aft, which is, I think that's the aft. Yeah, which is button 20. And that's going to press 2, which switches us to air to ground mode. And then it's going to switch the mode of Joystick Gremlin. And so then that makes this mode active. And these along, even though you don't see them, all of the parent buttons work too. And so the 18 will return us. That presses it, returns us back, switches to default mode. And then 19, which is forward, from the default, that would pull up the air-to-air mode. But since we're in a different mode now, it won't. What it'll do, and this is what I have set to cycle between the PB6 and PB7. That switches weapon stations. And again, that gets very specific to a specific loadout. So you may or may not want to use something like that. And then button 20 is the step button, and that just steps through the stations. And then again, press 18, and that returns us back to, it just turns off the air-to-ground mode, switches back to default mode. And so that's how you can use, you can get more functionality of one switch or one hat. You know, it can have multi-function there, just depending upon how much effort you're willing to put into setting that up. And there you have it.